Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you can see me. I'm Stephanie Weisman, Artistic Director and founder of the Marsh and MarshStream. And tonight's MarshStream features Mark McGoldrick. Tonight's a bit of an experiment. Kind of marshy, yes. I'm sitting in a truck in front of the Trinity Center Market because that's the only place I can get good enough phone coverage to Zoom this show tonight. So bear with me, and hopefully we won't see any bears. I hope you will consider supporting the Marsh Stream and its artists with a tax-deductible donation to the tip jar, or join our membership program. Tonight's tips are matched. And please subscribe to the Marsh's YouTube channel and be notified when our shows go live. You can see all our archive shows at themarsh.org. Okay, now let's welcome Mr. Mark McGoldrick, Assistant Public Defender for Alameda County. He has represented poor people, mostly of color, in the criminal courts for over 25 years. In the early 1980s, he broke his neck and has navigated the world as a paralyzed person since. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us. Now let's welcome Mark. How are you, Mark?
Hey, Stephanie, how are you? I'm not in a car, so I'm good.
I'm not so bad in the car. It's got a very comfortable seat.
Yeah.
Maybe a little dark, but that's it. I'm sitting under a light. So how are you doing today? Tell us what's happening. Tell us how you got to be a public defender.
I got to be a public defender because when I finished law school in the early 90s, the civil rights movement that I thought I'd participate in had turned into kind of a prison building, lock up all the poor people kind of vibe in the country. And that's where I saw the need. And it kind of suited my personality to go into court and try to wrest some justice from powerful institutions. And you get to play cops and robbers without getting dirty.
And today is National Disability Day or National Disability Week. And just wondering, how has that disability affected you and your ability and your want to be a public defender?
You know, that's interesting. I don't know of any other practicing attorneys in our county who use a wheelchair. It's not easy. There's some of the just navigating the courtroom, and there are inaccessible features just of that. But you know, one thing that is interesting is I am not poor and I'm not a person of color, but a lot of my clients who are, mostly both of those, they often connect with me in a way beyond me being a white guy in a suit, because they can see that maybe I've traveled some roads that they have. I don't know. And that's an important thing about disability. Just as a lot of people are learning right now with public health, with the pandemic, these things are not distributed equally. And my clients suffer all kinds of public health problems and disabilities based on things like no access to good medical care and being shot and doing difficult jobs where you get hurt on the job. So it works for me in my rapport with my clients generally. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Do you want to talk a little bit about how this came to be, how you became paralyzed?
Sure. I was a senior in high school and just leading a destructive lifestyle. Too much drinking, too much horsing around, getting kicked out of school, breaking my hands in fights, things like that. And finally, we just had a terrible car crash. And so it left me, badly fractured skull, coma, broke my neck in a few places, broke my face, broke my jaw, broke my cheek, bit through my tongue, broke teeth, broke my arm, broke my feet, broke a lot of shit. So then, it was a long road back. The show that this excerpt is from, Countercoup, the first act covered the first 3 months of that kind of thing when I was just in a hospital trying to get better enough to go to a rehab hospital. And then the second act was going to a rehab hospital where I was in a ward with people with spinal cord injuries, all trying to rebuild their lives. And then what happens when we got out? So, breaking my neck then started this years-long journey of what's it mean to have a life, value in the world? How much is that dependent on different abilities you have? What's lost with a disability, and in what ways is it irrelevant? All those kind of things. So just like any young person trying to find themselves in the world, I also spent those years trying to find myself in the world and figure out my worth and my role as a person who's paralyzed using a wheelchair. So it's very interesting.
Do you think that if you hadn't gotten in this car crash, that you would have ended up in Harvard Law School and where you are now, or would things have been maybe different?
No, I was not on an academic track. I was expelled. I was not allowed to go to the school. I was working in restaurants with people who were partying too much. That's all I wanted to do. I probably would have found myself eventually, but there probably would have been some broken eggshells, some damage done before I ever kind of came out of the funk I was doing. Probably not law school. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, quite interesting. And you're going to perform. We might as well have you perform real soon. So you're going to perform an excerpt from Countercoup, a performance. But before this, how did you end up doing solo performance? You're a public defender. You're
Yeah.
what? How did that trajectory get you to solo performance?
Before law school, I loved to write. Law school kind of beat the joy of writing out of me. But then I like poetry, and I would write poetry. And then that morphed into doing spoken word pieces, and then longer spoken word pieces. And then I took some classes here and there and worked with terrific people like David Ford, Charlie Barron, and learned how to take a spoken word piece, which is nice, but a short vignette, and build on it into a longer piece. And that was a real challenge. So I've written a couple full-length solo plays. It's fun. It melds some of the storytelling with some of the oral representation we do as public defenders, because we're on our feet in court, winging it often, talking to clients, talking to the court. With theater, with art, it just blends a lot of things that I enjoy. So that's what got me there.
So you said you became a public defender because you didn't like what was, you were seeing in the world and the civil rights movement and all that stuff that you were
Yeah.
talking about. Do you think the solo performance is another route to meet those needs to change the world?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit, Stephanie.
Oh dear. Do you think doing solo performance is another way to meet those needs that you had to change the world?
I don't presume much. I don't presume that. Well, some people will see it, some people will enjoy it, some people might not. I don't know. But it's communicating. A lot of my stories have people like my public defender clients in them. The piece I'm going to do tonight very much does. And a lot of my stories, but also my advocacy, is trying to make or allow for other people to see the humanity of my clients and see the humanity of certain characters. And I'm kind of attracted to people who we like to ignore, who we like to throw away, devalued people in the world. That's more of where my interest is. And frankly, like when people know about celebrities and stuff, who gives a fuck? I mean, enough people know about like the lives of the rich and famous. For me, a lot of living goes on. People who have to sleep in cars or, in an RV under a interstate bypass, all these kind of things. Stories that don't get ballyhooed much. Those are the stories and the funk and the raw living that attract me more. I have more interest in that. And the counterbalance to that is to live well. I don't live that lifestyle. I have more than enough luxury and means, but it also makes me appreciate what I have when I spend time with these terribly beaten down people.
Like, you've been doing it for 25 years. Do you have any sense of how many cases you've done in those 25 years?
Well, there's, I've handled thousands of people's cases, but some of those are for a very short time. Some as short as you meet someone and you do a bail pitch and get them out of custody and they move along their way. Other people, I have cases that I've had for 2 and 3 years. Thousands, between interviewing people, representing them, visiting them at the jail. It's just a wash of humanity. And it's always, even though there's repeating patterns, it's always someone new and different and a wrinkle and the unique qualities that make each of these people different and important.
Wow.
Many people.
And you're not burnt out. Do you feel burnt out? How do you keep energized?
That's a real concern in my field. What I said earlier about for me, it might be selfish. I live really well. I eat what I want to eat. I eat well. I drink a nice wine if I want a nice wine. You have to have places to purge the stress. For years, I would go to the gym and swim before coming home. And by the time I, swam a half a mile, I wouldn't hate that one fucking judge as much anymore for that night, that kind of thing. Exercise, art. And so what I find is if I have my outlets and if I live well, then I can show up and bring something to my job. If I don't do that, then you get frazzled, you get crispy, and you ain't worth shit anyways. So for me, I live well. And then the excess goes back.
Yeah. Well, it's always been a pleasure. You've been around the marsh for how long now? How long have you been doing performances?
I think I first started taking classes with Charlie Varon in the early 2000s. Yeah,
So
because
almost.
I had the first full length show in 2005.
Was that Golden Hammer?
It was Golden Hammer. Yeah.
And then the second one was Countercoup. You want to get ready to do it. You're going to do a 15 to 20-minute excerpt, right? Do you have anything you want to say to set it up?
Sure. This is toward the end of the play, and it's kind of a buddy piece. It's the guy who was kind of like my best road dog in the spinal injury hospital. Um, you know, doing the spinal rehab was a very, very difficult thing, and he and I kind of went through it at the same time together. And then we got out of the hospital, and for all kinds of reasons of whatever they were, class, whatever, exposure to resources, our lives took very different paths. So this is late in the play. It's hard material, you know. It's not first date material. That's about it.
Well, Mark McGoldrick, let's go for it. Here's an excerpt of Countercoup.
6 months after my injury, finally, I discharged to my parents' home. No nurses, no aides, no therapists. My room's gone. They've switched my room for my sister's. It's bigger, has a bathroom. Your posters are in the closet. We can help you hang them up. They went through my stuff. I can't fit in the bathroom. I shower in the yard with a garden hose. In the home of my youth, I can't open a cupboard, get down a cereal bowl. My parents moved kitchenware onto lower shelves, but everything's always in the wrong fucking place. When I'm fine, do you need anything? No. Are you sure? Did I ask for help? But when I do need help, they're not around. They don't intuit my fucking needs. No nurses, no therapists, no aides. Just me and my family. Room. 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 Hand controls. I relearned how to drive. I use insurance money to shop for a new car. My sister schleps me around to dealerships. I need something big enough I can fold up my collapsible wheelchair, schlep it into the back seat. It's hard. What I find is the biggest old people's car God ever made. An Oldsmobile Delta 88, chocolate over cream, electrical everything. A moonroof. It's invisible at 80 miles an hour. Invisible beneath the radar to cops looking for red cars and Corvettes. Fast, smooth, comfortable. Crushed cocoa upholstery. A tape deck. Auto reverse. When Jim gets out, he moves into a bare cinder block house on the southwest side. Most of the walls haven't been sheetrocked. Pizza boxes, Burger King wrappers, beer cans, Jack Daniels number 7 bottles, rolling papers, ashtrays, dishes in the sink. If it's not Stevie Ray Vaughan bouncing on the boombox, it's Leonard Skinner. Whiskey bottle, brand new car. Oak tree, you're in my way. Jim's personal care attendant sits on the sofa, pulling bong hits in front of Tom and Jerry cartoons. Dude, what's up? What do you think? It's not the hospital. We load up in my car, 3 in the front seat, my wheelchair in the back, Jim's in the trunk. We drive over to La Perla del Mar for the best unknown Mexican food on the southwest side. La Perla has this fantastic seafood soup, cold like a gazpacho, but loaded with camarones and oysters, chunks of onion, pimiento. We get down at the pull-up window, then drive over to the bar where Jim cashes his check. At the Desert Lounge, the attendant goes inside. Fred, the bartender, comes out, talks to Jim through the open car window. You hanging in there? I just came out to see how you are. To make sure you're out here. Because I don't want your check walking in here without you. You know what I mean? Jim says he'll get a bank account as soon as he has some money. Not a problem. As long as there's money in the till, not a problem. Fred goes back inside. The attendant comes out with Jim's welfare money, 6-pack of Budweiser tall cans. It's hard to get Jim in and out of the car. The bullet struck his spine the same level as I broke my neck. But he's not getting the same return of function I am. He's not working out. He's got his pet centipedes. The red lattice work of scars from each place they opened them up. Centered with a purple raised entrance wound. My monkey's butt. So we have our feast back at his place. Maybe snort some stepped on powder cocaine I score in the suburbs. Talk a lot, get real tight. And I cruise home thinking Zenyatta Mandata by the Police is about the best album ever made. The sound pouring out the moonroof as the Delta 88 glides through the desert night. Invisible. Invulnerable. Do-do-do-do. Da-da-da-da. That's all I've got to say to you. Do-do-do-do. Da-da-da-da. The innocence will see me through. At the community college, my knees don't fit under the desks. I don't know what to do with my books and notebooks during lectures. They fall off my lap during class. I can't pick them up. I take Jim to Social Security to apply for disability benefits. Now calling A73. Paperwork's incomplete. I take Jim to Social Security to apply for disability benefits. Fucking need to be notarized? I take Jim to Social Security to apply for disability benefits. Fuck! His license expired in the hospital. I take Jim to disability benefit application. They accept the paperwork. 8 weeks later, he gets a green IBM punch card check from the Treasury. $881 a month. Oh yeah. Another time I take Jim to the Union Hall. He's in good spirits. They're supposed to open a new job classification for me. Hell, I can read blueprints. I wait in the car doing geology homework. Subduction zones, slip faults, the breakup of Gondwanaland, the Indian subcontinent chugging northward for like 50 million years. Bam! Slams into Asia like a car fender tacoing. Up go the Himalayas. Plate tectonics is so fucking bitching. Jim comes back. Well, that's that. What's what? Nothing. Whole lot of nothing. I visit Jim after he gets out of the hospital again. Another fall. His leg spasmed in the shower. Bam! Smashed his face into the faucet controls. Stitches in his chin. Bandage across the bridge of his nose. Chip some teeth. I tell him he needs to stretch more. It might help with the spasms. I tell him about the adaptive weight room at school. Dude, they have a disabled student services office. Man, they'll hook you up. You should fucking go. You sound like vocational rehabilitation. I'm an iron bender. No, you were an iron bender. Now you're quadra fucking pelagic. Now you really sound like Voc Rehab. They had me work on resume writing. I say, resume for what? What kind of jobs you have for me? You saw what happened at the Union Hall. They say, oh, we'll work on that later. For now, let's work on the resume. I say, I know motorcycles and welding. That's my resume. Well, what are you going to do? I don't fucking know. Okay, man? I don't fucking know. This doesn't seem to be the time to tell Jim my big news. I won a Regents scholarship. I can transfer to the 4-year state school and not pay tuition. Well, at least I got these. Jim washes down a Vicodin with a slug of beer. Tells me about a recent car trip to Tucson where they scored cheap papers of Mexican brown heroin. When the shit hit the blood, it was about the best thing he could remember. Just like going home. Yeah. Just like going home. His attendant strapped his arm off. Jim used his gimpy right hand to try to work the hypo in. When he finally hit a vein, he had the attendant come help push the plunger. Papers of heroin? I don't even know what that means. Becomes a joke. Hey, should we get a 12-pack? Or a case? Hell, push the plunger. They laugh. We gotta roll down Tucson one of these days. I know some people, man, will hook us up. Yeah. Yeah, we should. No, man, I mean it. I know some people down there, man, will hook us up. Yeah. Yeah, we should. They start a new adaptive scuba diving program at the Lions Club. How fucking cool is that? Jim's psyched too, but then doesn't have the money or something. I get certified on a checkout dive near Guaymas, Mexico. My dive buddy holds onto my tank, and then with his feet, he flipper kicks us all along the coral reef. Still sunburned, I take the dive photos over to show Jim. He's been to the hospital again. He gets in these rages, beats on his legs with his fists. Voc Rehab cut him off because he wouldn't go to job training. He wouldn't go to job training because he had no way to get there. He had no jobs to train him for. Now, I only got social fucking security. Dude, Jim. Still your legs, man. Fuck, they're part of you. One swells up like half again the size of the other. His most recent attendant didn't come back last night. Jim spent the night stuck in his wheelchair, sleeping with his head on the table, puddle of urine beneath him. Some new guy comes in. Jim gets drunk. New guy goes to put him in a bed. Doesn't know what he's doing. Dude, hold on. Wait. Dude. You have to press on the outside of his knees with the inside of your knees. So when you stand and pivot, his lower body goes with you. New guy doesn't listen. He just grabs Jim around the waist and stands him up. Jim's legs splay out rigid. New guy can't take him to the bed because of the rigid legs. Can't take him back down to the wheelchair. Just stands there holding Jim like a dance partner. Jim slowly sliding down the new guy's front, t-shirt riding up. New guy's holding him by the armpits and tries to shove him back toward the wheelchair. Misses. Bam! Jim goes down. Fuck! New guy walks out. New guy comes back. The cigarette tip and angry fireball. Okay. Let's do this. He spins Jim around, sits him against the side of the bed. He squats down in front of him, grabs him by the armpits. Rah! He hauls Jim onto the bed, his torso mostly on. He falls on top of Jim. Jim's pants coming down a little. I show the new guy how to rock Jim back and forth to take his clothes off. I find a bed bag and I show him how to unhook the external catheter from the leg bag and hook up the bed bag so he doesn't piss himself during the night. I put a glass of water next to the bed and I finish my beer. And I take a couple cans of beer. And I drive away knowing I won't go back. I blast past the boulders of South Mountain, through cotton crops fast and alfalfa fields, and I run stop signs through citrus groves. I'm lifting weights, taking my classes, I'm swimming laps, trying to keep it all in the air. Blast past cement-lined canals, newly paved roadways, subdivisions, strip malls, payday loan centers, pawn shops, drive-through liquor stores. And I'm 18. I'm 19 years old. I'm trying to keep up the front. Past green belts and golf courses and desert arroyos and ranch homes on acre lots, big fake ass faux Spanish mission bullshit McMansions and nicer cars. And it's not that I can't go back. I don't want to. God damn you, Jim. My streets, my neighborhood, my house. I don't want to go back. You watch Jim fall down.
Wow, Mark. Wow.
Huh.
Wow.
I told you, good first date material, huh?
Well, the good first day for me being in a truck doing my first truck show. What can I say?
Yeah.
A lot better to be office homeless than homeless.
Yeah, of course.
That was
Of course.
amazing, Mark. Thank you so much. How do you
Thank you.
how does it feel now? I mean, can you live with it now? What is it, was he older than you? He was much older?
He was about 10 years older than me. Yeah. Yeah. He was in a different place. For him, for him getting shot and he hadn't done anything wrong, it was a bad shooting. His whole world was taken away from him. His job, his truck, his spouse left him, and then he's a destitute, paralyzed guy. Whereas for me, I didn't blame anyone. It made sense to me. For me, it was more of a fresh start. And now that's a very important starting point, when you're talking about the psychological response to a disability. For him, everything was taken away. And for me, I felt like I just had a new lease on life. So we had very different starting places, and I had resources. I had good medical coverage. I got a little money from an insurance policy. Once I decided to go to school, I had some aptitude. Similar disabilities affecting people differently because of all those external reasons and whatever, personal makeup people take to it.
Really? I mean, it's that equity thing. It's the, like you come from a certain place, right? A certain age,
Yeah.
a certain ability to remold yourself, take a pause, move on. Deeply, deeply moving. How does this fit? You said it a little bit more, but how does this fit with the rest of the show? And
well, this is right at the end. So this comes after you've learned some of the backstory of Jim, and you've seen me going from a young, arrogant, kind of prick of a guy, taking things for granted, to then very nearly dying. And then very methodically, I had to very methodically put my life back together. I mean, starting from being in a coma, not even understanding what was occurring. And I couldn't talk for weeks. So appreciating sound is, there was some weeks where I knew what was going on around me, but I couldn't move. I was in enormous pain. Anything that wasn't paralyzed was broken or stitched up or fucked up. But I couldn't communicate with the world. And then when I finally figured out how to speak, it was a word, pop, so every word was gold, So it was just a years-long process of very methodically putting a life together. and then seeing what the outer boundaries were. You know, I have a large, super supportive family, and I wouldn't be here, you know, without them. But then things like, well, okay, is this fake bubble that I'm in because I got a couple insurance dollars? My parents happen to live in a flat ranch house, no stairs. I have family helping me. Is this like a fake sense of self-worth? So then for years, I'd kept pushing the boundaries, traveling further, going to other countries to explore. Does my life have value out of the context of the cocoon of my home, of the people who love me and care for me? Does that translate into the big, you know, hard world out there? So for me, it was a very fascinating, years long kind of young person's journey. Yeah.
And does that keep going now? Does it still inform your life?
It does. I mean, I decided a long time ago that, hey, I have whatever value I have, and that's okay. But here's the interesting thing. Just like all these different, like everybody, whatever it is, people of color, women, whatever, you find yourself in new situations that you haven't confronted before as you age. So it's kind of like, aha, here's what it's like to tell my wife's family that we're going to get married and see if they think that sucks because I have a disability. You know, the first jobs you're applying for, having, you know, more recently having kids, what it's like to parent as a person with a disability. Because life propels you on and you've never been there before. So you're always trying to figure out that thing and integrating your whole self into it. So it doesn't stop. It doesn't. You're always trying to integrate that part of your life into wherever you are presently.
You know, this seems like, so Jim got shot. He had nothing to, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Is that what happened to him?
Yeah, he was shot by a police officer. And the police officer thought he had committed a robbery, and Jim hadn't committed a robbery and didn't even understand what the officer was doing, and it happened very, very quickly. And so he knew the name of the officer who shot him, and he got no compensation from the city because it was ruled a justified shooting, even though Jim hadn't done anything. And he probably didn't pursue a good lawyer or whatever. So, you know, he had the name of the guy who shot him for no reason that Jim could see, and ruined his life. And that would just stick in his craw. Yeah.
Whereas you kind of felt like you were messing up, and that's how you ended up that way, taking some kind of response. It was.
Yeah, you know, I've never understood this response that some people have to bad things happening, where they say, "Gosh, why me?" I think, well, why the fuck not you? You know that some certain percentage of the population, you know, fall downstairs and have heavy things fall on their head, or in a plane that crashes. Why should it be you? And so for me, it made perfectly good sense because I kept fucking up, and the consequences were bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because I kept fucking up more greatly. And then finally, this was like life saying, "No, homie, you're done. We've given you all the chances to fall from low branches. Now we're gonna fuck you up so much that if you really want to live, crawl back for it, you know." And also, like, leave a lot of your humility, you know. I mean, it was very interesting because I went from being an athletic white guy, perceived as hetero, to all of a sudden, being a person with a disability, and I could perceive how people treated me differently. And I knew the contrast because I'd lived one life and I was leading another. And I kind of raged against that disparate treatment. But it comes with a lot of humility, accepting help from people, accepting people thinking you're stupid because you're using a wheelchair, or, giving your friend your credit card when you just handed your credit card to the clerk, or whatever weird shit people do when they're around people with disabilities. So it comes with a lot of humble pie. But, it's all right. It's good.
Well, thank goodness, Mark, because you've been good. It's been always wonderful to have you at the Marsh. I mean, I know you whitewater raft and you solo perform, and I won't whitewater raft, that's for damn sure. And I barely can make myself solo performer, but you have, so put yourself out there for all these years. That whole thing of, what a big issue it always is, but taken to another level right now with Jim being shot by a policeman. And right now you're at the Oakland Public Defender's office, and we've got Kamala Harris, our vice president. And can you talk a little bit about that and how you feel about that, and the whole thing that's going on with President Obama and saying, you can't just defund the police, right? It just doesn't sit well with trying to get things you want done. So you have something to comment about that?
Sure. I hated the slogan, defund the police, because I think it was imprecise and it was just throwing red meat out there for people to chomp onto. I just thought it was a crappy slogan, but a good idea. We need to invest in people in ways other than wait till they fuck up and then lock them up. And, a lot of my clients, there's not many resources invested in their life when it matters. Neonatal care before they're even born, and then early childhood development and a safe school, a good school, all these things. They live in difficult, dangerous, shitty areas often. And then, surprise, they fuck up and become my client. Oh, we're so surprised. And then the state is never short of resources to crush them and to warehouse them in cages for years on end. That's a terrible investment in public money. And it's a terrible, inhumane thing to do. It's a terrible waste of human potential. I have clients that are, have so much potential, but that's happened. So the defund the police is a nice idea, terrible slogan. And fine, we need police officers for certain core missions, but we have people who go to the emergency room for primary care because they don't have insurance. That's a stupid waste of money. And where do people get mental health treatment in the county? Jail. Police officers respond and there's someone having a mental illness crisis. Well, can't just leave them here. I guess we'll take them and lock them up. It's a terrible humanitarian crime to do that. And it just is a waste of money because jail is fucking expensive. And it's also just an inhumane place. So, Kamala Harris. I knew her from the DA's office. Briefly, we overlapped. I am very excited to have a woman as a vice president. I love having a woman of color. This is fantastic. I'll try to forget her prosecutorial roots. But we'll see. I'm very hopeful now that they're in charge. But it's also very interesting that the tide has changed a little bit on the public's awareness of what people in the business have long known about the prison building boom in the United States and how it's full of people of color. And how is that not just an extension of the Jim Crow segregation and from there slavery? It's just really inhumane. But now that's starting to break out into the voting populace a bit. And so you have people who are prosecutors running as reformers, whereas, for the first 20-something years of my career, every legislative session, every legislature, DA, governor, they were falling on themselves to ratchet up the punishment so that they could all look tougher on crime, even if it was fucking stupid shit on crime. So now they're trying to backpedal and try to be reformers and, qualify their past. Fine. But I'd like to see what we do moving forward. We can't afford this prison system we have.
So
The sheriff should not have the biggest fiscal footprint in the county. And they do. These sheriff's officers, these fiefdoms, they don't get voted out. And in this liberal county, Alameda County, guess what? Nobody told our sheriff that this is a liberal county. That jail, Santa Rita Jail, it's a shithole. It's a dangerous place during COVID. It's a brutal place. I hate that my clients are in there. And there we have it. They're in there.
Well, give us 3 things you would do to change the system right now.
Well, there's so many. But what I said about investing in people's lives earlier, try to have, we have to get people who live in neighborhoods to have buy-in to policing. The kind of occupying army of these too often too corrupt police departments visiting neighborhoods of color where they're seen as an occupying army and distrusted, that's a stupid way to police. People don't want to talk to you, don't want to cooperate with you. They see a crime, they don't want to tell the crime. It breeds more crime. But we have to invest in people. Having health insurance would help. Having access to remedial ways to get off drugs other than go to jail and being cold turkey. We have to provide ways of weaning people off drugs, which include providing drugs to them to wean off. I don't have just 3 things.
Well, I didn't want to put too much pressure on you. You could do like 100 or so. We have 5 minutes left. But are those the ones that you want to say? Any other ones? 3 plus ones?
Well, we're making a good start toward reducing some of the sentences. We are realizing that these sentences that call for such enormous lengths of time that deprive people of hope and are expensive and deprive neighborhoods of talented people. It's just not. It's not humane. It's not cost effective. And it's just shameful. There's all those things. Stable housing. We have to figure out what to do with this homelessness thing. Equity in schooling. I hate the fact that school districts are funded by like property taxes and stuff. We have to have a way more equitable distribution of resources for public schooling. It's criminal that we have really well-funded, excellent public schools who have programs, art, music, PE, and then these other schools that have crap for playgrounds. They don't have those extracurriculars. A lot of learning doesn't happen. We have to give children in poor neighborhoods better schooling so that they can have the tools to be employable. That's a big deal.
And that's kind of similar to the story with Jim, isn't it? That you had the resources to be able to move forward, and he didn't,
Yeah.
both economically and mentally. There's a question here. I mean, we've got incredible. You'll have to look at the chat. So many people are saying wonderful things about your performance. Owen has a question. I'm curious about your choice at 18 to leave Jim behind as your lives parted ways, and your choice later in life to commit yourself to people who are struggling in possible parallel ways in your professional life. Do you see the connection? We love you, Owen and Latona.
Hey, New Orleans. We got New Orleans in the house. When I left Jim, part of it was just not my own survival. But that relationship was not good for me to be in anymore. It was a dark place, and I couldn't really be there anymore. And there was a number of friends I had, paralyzed people who I knew from those times, and I would kind of be a proselytizer, go to community college, get involved in these programs, and some of them didn't, and some did, but the ones who didn't, and work matters. It matters to be able to do things and succeed and have your own money that you earn. These things matter to our self-esteem and our sense of place in the world. And Jim was someone who was just, for all kinds of reasons beyond my reach, going to bad, dark, dangerous places. And I didn't want to be there with him. I didn't want to get into it. So I withdrew. Now, but the idea of it's always fascinated me who thrives and who doesn't. What is that, resiliency or life force or whatever it is. And with my clients, I have given so many kind of avuncular, big brother, whatever they need. Some need a kick in the pants. Some need a shoulder to cry on. Some you have to talk down from the ledge because they're suicidal. Some you got to kick in the balls because they think they're all that and they're not seeing the stupidity of their way. But the idea is to try to help people reach whatever potential or sense of happiness they might attain. So that's always been interesting to me. Who thrives and who's happy and who seemingly lives well, and why do other people seemingly not? And how can we help them? It's very presumptuous of me, and I apologize for that.
Well, better you do that than whatever. We're glad you're presumptuous, and we're so glad you thrived. And can you believe it? It's 8:30 already. And Mark, I hope that you are going to do more of that show on Zoom. Maybe you'll do the whole thing. Hey, can I talk you into that now that you've done this little piece for the first time on Zoom?
This is interesting. It's such a different world, playing to my cell phone than a stage. So these last 2 weeks since we talked, Stephanie, been a very large, steep learning curve for me. Yeah.
Well, you might as well keep it going up. We want to see the whole thing. This audience, you're going to have to read these chats. We want to see the whole show on Zoom. It's been a while since you performed it. Just one little question. Are you doing a new show?
Between the pandemic and I got 2 little kids homeschooling. There hasn't been the bandwidth lately.
Well, that's okay. Well, we'll just
Yeah.
maybe we can get you 4 times in different places, and you'll have your show done.
That's
And
right.
we do the whole thing together. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Stephanie. This was a hoot.
Well, I'm so glad. Everybody, tip jar, give us a donation. Keep us going on these wonderful shows. Your tips are matched. And next week, come see Carla Hoke Miller. Interesting, so interesting. I think we all want to know how New York is faring during the pandemic and what the city of New York is doing. And our little talks with Carla, they're doing some really great things, and maybe we can get some San Francisco things going like it as well. So, thank you, Mark. Everybody come back to our shows. I see Don Reed is in the audience, and he is going to be starting a new game show on December 11th. Join us for that. Join us for Josh's this week. And please come see Marga Gomez, Not Getting Any Younger, Saturday at 7:30, Sunday at 5. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye, Mark. We made it through. No bears attack the car. Bye.
It happens, right? You're on your way to a very important meeting.
The right one, and finally, I turn to the place I always turn when I'm utterly lost and desperate.
Livelier. Can you do something a bit livelier? Of course I can.
We need to talk to you right now. We just need a momento. You can do your homework later.
I composed this song in prison in San.
Walking down the street, going to the theater. I mean, I had many breakfasts at Venus, and then I
read a little excerpt from it right now.
Excerpt. I love that word. Excerpt.
And she would call me like from the self-help home. She'd go, "They have their Sabbath on Fridays. Did you know that?"
2, 3, 4. And up.
Your ability to be online, pre-check how you look on camera, and also check for glasses. You see how much glare is on that?
Know that we are one.
It sounds like hell, if you know what I mean. But for some reason, we call it living the dream.
Okay, 069, and I don't want any of your smart aleck sex talk that I usually get when I get 069.